I welcome you all to another episode of Analytics Week Leadership Podcast. Today we have with us Dr. Nipa Basu from Dun&Bradstreet. To give you a quick bio, Dr. Nipa is the Chief Analytics Officer at Dun&Bradstreet. Nipa is the main source of inspiration and leadership for Dun&Bradstreet extensive team of data modelers and scientists that partners with world's leading Fortune 500 businesses to create innovative analytic solutions to drive business growth and results. Nipa joined Dun& Bradstreet in year 2000 and since then held key leadership roles focusing on driving the success of DNB's analytics practice. In 2012, Nipa was named Leader Analytics Development. In March 2015, Nipa was named Chief Analytics Officer and appointed to Dun& Bradstreet's executive team. Nipa began her professional career as an economist with New York State Legislative Tax Study Commission. She then joined Sandy National Laboratories, a national defense laboratories where she built microsimulation models of the US economy. Prior to joining Dun& Bradstreet, Nipa was database marketing statistician for AT&T with responsibility for building predictive marketing models. Nipa received her PhD in economics from State University of New York at Albany, specializing in econometrics. So, Nipa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Vishal.
I think one thing I was very fascinated about looking at your profile was definitely analytics officer at Dun& Bradstreet. So both are very analytical extensive, right? So at first, why don't we sort of discuss your background? Because I read some part of it, but I'm sure I'm missing out on a lot of action that has helped you be where you are today. So why don't we spend some time on your journey through this analytics?
Sure. You actually did not miss out on a whole lot. So I'm one of those people, whatever job I worked in, whatever I did, it has always been in the area of analytics. I think this is the only thing I know how to do, and this is the only thing I'm really interested in doing. So my career development has kind of happened parallel to the way world's view of analytics has changed. I remember now ages ago when I was finishing PhD, analytics was not this hot. It was quite difficult to get jobs. Many of the jobs were getting outsourced to India. Imagine how ironical those things are for me because, as you can guess, I came here from India. But then it all changed. Lots of jobs are still outsourced to many different parts of the world, but the demand for analytics work has increased to an extent, and our ability to do interesting work has changed dramatically. So I consider myself to be very lucky with the timing and everything.
Interesting. So, very well said, by the way. We all are lucky to be living in this world with a lot of data and processing that needs to happen. So now
Yeah.
let's talk about Dun& Bradstreet. So I think I remember when I sent you a request, I said credit monitoring and said, no, Vishal, it's actually credit scoring. So definitely love to learn what DNB is, what you guys are doing, anything fun there.
Sure. So credit scoring is the most traditional part of our business. We are actually the pioneers for business level credit scoring, and we still do that. And there was a time when our reporters used to go around and interview people and collect data. All of that, of course, has changed. We use all modern methods of collecting data, and then we apply all sorts of modern analytics technique to come up with the scores. Scores are essentially probabilities. Probabilities of not paying on time, probabilities of going bankrupt, and things like that. But that's no longer the only thing Dun& Bradstreet does. Dun& Bradstreet is now an analytics and data company. We are in the business of providing insight from the massive amount of data that we have collected. And The use cases for these things could vary. It could be a sales and marketing solution, it could be a supply risk solution. More and more, a lot of our solutions are directed towards the analytic persona, the chief analytic officer persona within our customer base. So this is what my team does. It's a team of mathematicians, and any business problem that can be solved mathematically utilizing data, we try to solve that.
Interesting, and thank you so much for explaining that. So now let's talk about a bit more about your role in DNB. So what really a role like chief analytics officer means for a company, credit scoring company?
Sure. Uh, so it's the primary job. The primary job is to build mathematical models. It could be for credit scoring or could be for solving a different business problem. So I have a team of statisticians, econometricians, mathematicians, some physicists, one or two chemists, I think, a few computer programmers. So we essentially come up with the mathematical algorithm. Then we hand over the algorithm to our technology group so that they could put it in our platform where the customers come and access the scores and other analytic solutions. But then also, as I told you, that we are doing more and more work with customers' analytics team.
Hmm.
When that happens, then we play a different role as well. Then it is not only building the solutions, but positioning the solutions and working very closely with customers' analytics teams to sort of formulate the problem and do and take it from the beginning to the end point.
Interesting, interesting. So, and if I you can share some light on the depth and the breadth of those decisions. So I think you definitely share some interesting point on that. Uh, so what are some of the sort of the wideness of those decision making, and what are some of the depths that you can share?
So for my company, okay, for Dun&Bradstreet, the kind of decisions that I will help make is, first of all, we have a chief data officer, who's my partner in crime. So what sort of data she should go after? What sort of data can be utilized in analytics and what can be monetized? Then we work very closely with our customer facing team to decide what sort of analytical solutions we should be building. Then, if you think about our customers, the kind of decisions that they make utilizing our analytics, most traditional one is the credit decision. Should I do business with this company? Is this business going to survive long enough to pay for my product or pay me back if I loaned them money? Does this business have growth potential? So I should probably send my best salesperson to have an engagement with this business. Is this business a good supplier for me? So it's these kind of decisions our customers make. Some very short term, some could be much more longer term strategic decisions. So we
Interesting.
provide insight on businesses, mostly on small businesses, but our customers are very large businesses. So large businesses utilize our analytics and insight to make decisions on small and medium-sized businesses.
Interesting. I think so. When you were describing that, I think one thing that came to my mind was one of the discussion with one of the leading banks, and they're talking about how, and it's actually a security discussion, that how the current sort of paradigm of security is changing, and how it's getting very difficult for couple of banks to figure out the risk and sort of and sort of calculate that. So for a company like DNB, I think you guys fall into the same category as well. That when your responsible is to make sure that the credit worthiness is as accurate as possible. So how do you sort of uh, you guys keep up to this growing sort of paradigm of technology evolution, and the security paradigms and sort of and even like more surplus availability of data and all that. So like what are some of the best practices or some of the methodologies that you can share that you guys have to go through to keep yourself ahead in the game?
Of course. Uh, I have been doing this for a very long time, and when I started doing this, the issue was how do we get data? Data was scarce, and the talent was how can you utilize small amount of data to draw conclusion. Also, then we went through a phase when there was plenty of data, but we didn't have the computing power that's strong enough that could crunch all that data in a short period of time because all the decisions will also have to be timely as well. Now, all those things are gone. There are very famous econometricians who made their names, or statisticians who made their names by coming up with methodology of using small sample. None of those things are relevant anymore. Uh, there has been a technological revolution. So it's disruptive technologies, and these disruptive technologies are enabling all sorts of disruptive analytics. Uh, so now the challenge is how do you find what data point is most relevant? There's plenty of data, but which ones are most predictive, which ones interact with which ones, and how do you really draw a conclusion that's actionable for a business decision maker? So there is one particular type of analytics that Dun& Bradstreet had started doing. We call it anticipatory analytics. So I'm sure you have heard of predictive analytics,
Right.
everyone has. So anticipatory analytics is a sibling or a close cousin of predictive analytics, where the time horizon is much longer, and you not only come up with a final prediction, but you predict the predictors, and then you predict multiple scenarios depending on the different combinations of where each of the predictors might go.
Interesting. I think definitely um, this actually this embarked one of the discussions that I had, I think a couple of months back, with one of the insurance provider executive there, and they say that, Vishal, right now for an insurance the life is very tough because we sort of work on very structured models, and now even like with global warming and whatever, right? So the variables are changing, and our model needs sort of a lot more faster calibration than we used to. So now we have to be, and there has to be sort of, so the moment you say anticipatory, I think that thing immediately struck my mind that, yeah, I think that's possible, uh, one of the things. So now, with that anticipatory sort of analytics, so you so how would how so if you can sort of describe a bit more about how you do that, I think that will be awesome.
Sure. Uh, so, in a traditional predictive analytics, actually it predicts the future, but it deals a lot with past data. The normal process is you choose a time period. That's your observation point, and you go back in time. Then you utilize the data to, in most cases, to actually predict the current situation, to predict the present. Because when you do that, you can test it, that it's actually working. And then you make the conclusion that if past can predict the present, then present will predict the future. That's traditional predictive analytics. In case of anticipatory analytics, utilizing all these advancements in technology and in analytics methodology, you are actually predicting the predictors. And you are not taking a snapshot in time, you are looking at a trend. You could go farther back in time, or you could use many more data points, maybe 10 times more or maybe 100 times more compared to traditional analytics. And then you end up predicting the predictors. You also look at interactions between the predictors. And then you don't predict one outcome. You don't predict one outcome with certainty, but you predict multiple outcomes with associated probabilities. Then, in some cases, the business user may even have the ability to influence the outcome. So, it kind of takes away the illusion of certainty and actually identifies the different possibilities.
Interesting.
And it works very well in certain situations.
Nice. No, I think thank you so much for shedding more light on that. Definitely, that's enlightening to me and hopefully to our audience too. So now let's take a step back on your current role, right? So how much of your role is outfacing versus infacing? Like how much do you deal with the client work, or I'm talking about a chief analytics officer role within DNB, deals with um, uh, like outside versus internal to the company.
Right. So we may be a bit unusual here, So most of my role is customer facing, outside customer facing, not internal customer. But it's because Dun&Bradstreet is a data and analytics company, and we sell analytics for a living. Most of my customers who are chief analytics officers in their companies, which could be high tech, could be telecom, could be financial services, I think their role is much more inward facing compared to mine or any other company that sells analytics for a living.
Okay. So if a company like DNB, right, if they need to create frameworks to like how, so what is the percentage of work? I think that's where I'm going to. Like, what's your percentage of your work actually is in facing like creating DNB's center of excellence versus actually helping out others and yeah.
So, uh, what we do is, so there are different kinds of data sources, right? There are data we are collecting that are the purpose behind collecting that data is to create solutions that will be sold externally. Then DNB has other kinds of data sources from which you could make uh, conclusions about DNB's own business. Who are the customers that DNB should target? Uh, who are the customers that Dun and Bradstreet should give credit or not? So these kind of decisions, internal facing, they are actually not my responsibility. Many
Interesting.
times, the mathematical algorithms that we create that are external facing, the same algorithms are
Right.
utilized by different departments of Dun and Bradstreet to make decisions, but I'm not directly responsible for those decisions.
Interesting.
It's
Interesting.
primarily external customers. But
Interesting.
that's specific to Dun and Bradstreet. That's
Right.
not how everybody runs their company.
Interesting. So I think as you were sort of describing your anticipatory analytics, I think one thing that I was thinking about is I think, and you briefly mentioned that. So in the world of streaming analytics and AI and sort of on these capabilities, what is really the future of credit scoring? Like how would and you partly touch. I think anticipatory does give me a hint of what's going on. But what do you think is the future of credit scoring, and from that maybe the analytics driven decision making that even you do through this process as well?
So yeah, so all sorts of new methodologies that are coming up. Uh, we are using all of them for coming up with many different kinds of solutions. But to tell you the truth, when it comes to credit scoring, that's probably the most conservative part of our business because credit managers, by nature of what they do, uh, they're somewhat conservative. And then there are certain legal issues, regulatory issues you have to keep in mind. So let me compare a sales and marketing solution versus a credit solution. For a sales and marketing solution, we have the liberty to use the most advanced methodologies. We could use data mining, any kind of data mining, any kind of artificial intelligence driven solution. And many times we are able to come up with really great answers that cannot be explained to a layman. You cannot do cause and effect. And these kind of solutions are okay to use in sales and marketing because they are being utilized to target your customer base.
Right.
So if based on some unusual or new methodology, we came up with a list of businesses and we said, okay, they're not that great a target. And they didn't get some email campaign or phone campaign. It's one kind of thing. You cannot apply those kind of things to credit scoring because credit scoring in some cases might even have to be defended in a court of law. So in
Hmm.
most cases, credit scoring algorithms have to be very intuitive. And let's say one of our customers, a bank, declines a small business loan based on a credit scoring model that my team has built. The bank will have to be able to explain it. It's even possible that they might have to explain it to lawyers.
Right.
So credit scoring models are still kind of built in the traditional framework. If those models are being used for approve decline decision. In the credit scoring world, also there are other kinds of decision making. So there, more modern technologies are more acceptable.
Interesting. Interesting. So now I think now let's talk about your client exposure. So basically, what are some of the challenges that you see in the industry, or that you're seeing to your clients, that some of the common denominator challenges that these guys have been struggling through?
Sure, there are a few. One is this whole thing, this big data and big insight drawn from big data. All these things have kind of suddenly exploded. So there is still less of a supply of skilled people who can do really good work. There are very talented data scientists, there are very talented predictive modelers, but it is still quite hard to find talented data scientists and predictive modelers who also have the business sense and who can do kind of both sides of the equation. That's one. Another challenge is I think analytics has been hyped up also quite a bit. So sometimes many of my clients who are analytics leaders of you know large companies, they are facing the challenge of too high an expectation. That as if analytics will be able to solve all problems. But in order to do that, you have to have the right data, you have to have the right infrastructure, you have to be able to apply it to the right problems. And in some cases, something else happens is there's a lot of effort goes into building an analytic solution, but ultimately business does not really use it. So there could be a business leader who has certain notions of what is supposed to happen. And when the analytics supports that notion, it gets adopted. When it's not, it gets neglected. So all these different challenges are out there.
Interesting.
Measuring ROI is another one. I think that's the key to success. If they can prove and show ROI, my counterparts in different companies, it works. For
And
me, it's a little bit easy because we sell the analytics.
right.
But
No, I think
if you
that,
are
yeah,
internally supporting analytics, it's a different story.
definitely. And so let's talk about some of the cultural challenges. I think this is one of the common denominator that I have seen from my limited interaction with a lot of businesses, that either e- either it's a so I think mostly it's a blame game. So either it's a leader that's a problem, or either it's the processes that are the problem, or either the infrastructure or the product itself is not compliant to these changing paradigms. So on, like, at the bottom of it, it's the culture of these rapidly evolving sort of methodologies and these changes. So what are some of your interactions with those cultural issues, and how do you think businesses who are going through these issues can get by, and sort of adopt these capabilities?
So I'm not sure I'm addressing your question 100%, but I'll try. So the cultural change that's needed is not all companies are yet data driven,
Right.
data or analytics driven. there is a desire, as I called it a hype. So there is a lot of interest in analytics, but actually utilizing data and analytics to make business decisions, that hasn't happened 100% yet. Then there was something else, we work with so many of our customers, and we actually did a survey of how many companies consider themselves to be analytically driven. And I don't remember the percentage now, but it wasn't
Right.
that high a percentage. Then there are very often, there are silos. So one kind of analytics decision is being made in one part of the company, and then completely disconnected, somebody else
Mm.
could make, again, analytics driven decision, but if they are not working together, their decisions might contradict or cancel out each other.
That's true. I
So
think
it
that's
will take some time, to get through all of this.
right.
Uh, there was a technological revolution, and it took some time for the companies to utilize proper IT infrastructure. Analytics also is going through similar things. I think the potential is huge, but companies are just warming up to it.
Interesting. So now let's talk about, so in the same paradigm of your clientele, when would someone contact you? Like, what are some of the use cases when they say, hey, let me call these guys, or let me sort of seek help. So what are some of those scenarios or situations?
Right. So it may seem a little bit counterintuitive, but most of my customers have very large analytics teams, and in many cases, teams even larger than mine. So uh, big companies with big data and analytics teams, they come to us for two different reasons. Dun&Bradstreet has been in data business for 175 years. So most of these companies already consume our data, and they understand that we have a lot of expertise in building solutions utilizing that data. They also have analytics teams that are very good, but they are not as experienced in utilizing Dun&Bradstreet data. So that's the primary reason. Then these days we are also getting a lot of projects where it is not about the data. It is about our analytic acumen. In last four
Nice,
or 5 years,
nice.
Dun& Bradstreet has invested a whole lot in analytics, so we are kind of getting known in the marketplace. So most of the time for these companies, it is to supplement their team, and we work with them very collaboratively. Then there is always the other end of the spectrum, smaller companies that don't have their own infrastructure or their
Mm.
own analytics team. They sometimes outsource all their analytics to us, but that's still relatively rare. We still mostly work with very large customers.
Interesting. And so now, let's talk about some of the good use cases, or some of the things that you are really blown away by. Like, I'm totally impressed by how these businesses are doing certain things. Like, what are some of those cases which you say, hey, like almost everyone somehow gets it?
Uh, So we do a lot of work with financial services customers, and uh, they're almost always at the cutting edge of analytics. Very recently, we have been working with a particular data source. It's a all banks contribute to this data source, and only the banks that are contributing to this data can utilize solutions built off that data. So we have been building analytic solutions. This is called Small Business Financial Exchange. We are not the only company that has
Mm.
access to it, but we are one of the companies. And working with these financial services companies, we have been uh, building. This is in the credit scoring area, risk scoring solutions that are far better than anything that was available in the marketplace. Then I talked to you about anticipatory analytics, uh, and anticipatory analytics. So we worked with a large telecom company, and use of anticipatory analytics completely changed how they target. Then there is one, I think I can almost make a special mention of it. Most of our, as you know, Dun& Bradstreet is primarily in the B2B space. So most of our analytics is about a business.
Mm.
Now we are changing that. For example, in the supply risk area, we have come up with a solution. We call it Tier N solution. This is the idea that companies know things about their suppliers pretty well, but do they know enough about their suppliers' suppliers? Suppliers, suppliers, suppliers. So if you go up to the nth tier, how much do they know? So we were able to identify how these businesses are interacting with each other. We were able to identify the network, and that was uh, a really different kind of solution. So it's no longer about one business, but it's about the network effect of that business works with other businesses. So how does the risk profile or the growth profile of that company changes depending on the network effects?
Interesting. No, I think definitely, and thank you so much for sharing that. So now let's talk about a bit about so couple of keywords we thrown through this interview. So chief data scientist and chief data officer. You said you have one that you co-work with, and yourself, chief analytics officer. Like, what really does like from your lens, what does these keyword really means? Because everyone somehow have a very different definition of what these three roles are. Like, what's your take on it?
Right. I think in different companies, they could be defined differently. Now, we are a data and analytics company, right? So, in this company, both of these roles are important. And, uh, I'm no organizational structure expert. So, we have worked in different structures. Like 2 years ago, we actually had the same person who was the chief data and analytics officer. When he left, we created the two roles.
Hmm.
So in our case, the chief data officer is responsible for collecting all the data. So Dun& Bradstreet has the world's largest database on businesses. So collecting all that data, then curating it, synthesizing it, and then making sure that the quality is the best. We have a lot of competition. So that's the chief data officer's work. Uh, we have dunce numbers that are utilized by all the companies. So the chief data officer is the one who, when her team maintains our dunce numbering system. Then my team works with that data. So the chief analytics officer's job is to draw insight from that data and build analytic solutions, the solutions that Dun& Bradstreet sells to other companies.
Interesting.
So that's the relationship between the two of us.
Okay, interesting. So now let's talk about bunch of trends. So that you are seeing, and it could be your personal take, or it could be um, company's take, whatever you want to share. So what are some of the interesting trends that you are seeing in the industry that are using power of analytics that you are really optimistic about? So you say like um, that you say, okay, this is something good, and I'm happy that businesses are using it. So like, what are some of those things that really you're excited about that businesses are either talking about it or at least thinking about using it, if at all?
Right. So analytics enables businesses or people to make better decisions, and better decisions always lead to better outcomes. This is a very theoretical way of saying it, but the promise of analytics is huge. And like everyone else, and as an analytic expert, I'm very, very optimistic about it. Then there's another trend, our company and some of the other companies are doing it, is utilizing this power of data and analytics. Could we do something that's good for the society? Of course, we are a profit motivated corporation, but there are things outside of that. You know. So there are many of these things uh, within Dun&Bradstreet we are working on, but there is one that we actually already went to market with. It's called uh, it's called the uh, HTRI, human trafficking. I was forgetting the what the acronym stands for. Human trafficking risk index.
Nice. Wow.
So this one actually enables companies to identify which companies are dealing with human trafficking.
Hmm.
Knowingly, a company will not do business with another. Knowingly, companies with good reputation will not engage in human trafficking. But again, we were talking about suppliers and suppliers, or customers,
That's pretty
customers.
cool, actually. Yeah.
So there could be things like that. So we have created an index of human trafficking, and we are hoping companies will utilize it. And if we are very ambitious about it, uh, it is possible that we will make a significant impact in reducing this human trafficking.
Interesting. Interesting. No, I think you raise a very good point here. So for a company like DNB, right? So you guys monitor a lot of data. You have world's largest databases, and you have been sort of always on the lookout of any interesting information that you can sort of scan and scoop. So on that aspect, like social data hacking and or social data monitoring, I think that's one of the very cool areas that and definitely it's cool, good to see you're doing something in it. Now let's talk about the future in that, right? So would you see social data monitoring playing more and more importance in your credit worthiness for businesses, or like what do you see? What are some of the use cases that are social at the same point they actually help decide your credit worthiness because you're a like, so what are some of the thoughts there?
Right. So we are doing a lot of work in that area. There is social media has become such a rich source of data. So we have been doing utilizing unstructured data analysis techniques to work with social media data. And where we have applied it the most and where our customers show a lot of interest is when we are dealing with uh, small businesses. If the business is sufficiently large, then very often there are traditional sources of data based on which you could make a very good decision. For small businesses, the social media data has become very important. And there is one other closely related but interesting data that's available to only companies like Dun& Bradstreet. Like I'll give you an example. Because we have all this business information, businesses come to us asking about other businesses. This is a great signal. This is in many cases more powerful than social media. Here's a business, and recently many other businesses are inquiring about it. It's this kind of things. Is the number of inquiries going up, going down? Is it steady? If there is a sudden increase, it might mean something very important that you need to probe into.
Right.
So all of these kind of data, besides the traditional business demographics, we are utilizing in building our solutions.
Interesting. No, I think one thing that I'm always very fascinated by is like company like DNB. So when you monitor a lot of data and you have to and company rely on DNB's reports to figure out the risk or credit worthiness of any particular company, and on the other side, there are a lot of data that is being made available, and even like risk with every vertical is totally different. A risk to one industry might not be the risk to the other one. Won't that give you like, isn't this giving you migraines on sort of how to create a holistic model that sort of adapt itself with this? So if tomorrow there's a new industry called social media buying or whatever, it comes with its own set of indicators or success or failures, and now cope up with that. And when you have like these areas exploding in like every direction, So yeah, what are some of the thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's not a headache. That's the fun part of it, right?
I know. To a
So we
statistician, it
have
is
what we
maybe.
call, yes, yes. We have what we call standard scores, you know. So uh, that's industry agnostic. That's our most basic bread and butter. Then we create many industry specific scores. We do a lot of customization of these scores to fit the different industries. In many cases, our customers' analytics team might subscribe to the very basic standard score from us, then do their own customization. So this is what keeps it interesting for us.
Nice, nice. So I think now let's shift gear a bit more on. Um, I think it's still on the trends and the buzziness of this industry. So like, what are some of the very overused term that you say, hey, like that term should not. It's way too misrepresenting and or like what are some of those very overused terms that you think that should go away?
Not sure if it should go away, but I think the term business analytics is overused, and you sometimes don't know what do people mean by it. Do they mean truly advanced analytics to which is predictive, or is it adding to rows in an Excel spreadsheet? So I think that term is a little bit uh, overused and used to mean many different things. There may be a need for a stricter definition of what qualifies as analytics.
Interesting, interesting. So now let's talk about small businesses, and I'm not sure how much exposure you have with small. I think one of the things that definitely I look up to or sort of big businesses is setting up standards so small businesses can follow, like some of the best practices, some of the things that because big businesses have appetite for risks, they have appetite to at least create a best practice somehow, and then small can sort of leverage that. So what are some of the good hacks that you would suggest for a small business, if at all, that they want to be a data driven company? Like what are some of the things that they could do to at least start on that journey, if at all? Like what are some of your thoughts on that?
Right. Actually, small businesses do have a lot of advantages also.
Yes.
They don't have to deal with old legacy systems and things like that.
Right.
And many of the different kinds of advanced analytics are actually being done by
Hmm.
startups. And initially they are small.
That's true.
So small or big or medium sized, if anyone is kind of starting on that journey, uh, I will suggest, be very realistic and choose the problems that can really be solved with the utilization of data or analytics. You know, collect the right amount of data. You don't have to go for huge infrastructures to start with. Form a team. Uh, a small analytics team will do to draw the insight from the data. Otherwise, collecting a lot of data doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You have to have the people to draw insight from the data. And it may sound a little bit self serving, but I will always suggest that work with outside companies. If that company's job is to do data and analytics, you should work with them. If you are trying to break into a different area, you are always better off working with specialists. But I also say you have to have at least a small team of your own. Complete outsourcing never works.
Right, right. Interesting. And on that point, like what are some of the indicators that sort of tells me I should make a phone call, I should talk to someone? Like what are some of those indicators that as a business th- uh, that sort of give me a hint that I should maybe need a help or I should seek help?
In terms of analytics,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, sure. Uh, uh, it's it's really the decision making process. The business. If we are talking about a startup, the founder or the business owner, uh, when they see that the decisions they're making are not being based on, if they're making all their decisions on simply on intuition, it may not work. So when they feel that there is scope of scope of fact-based decisioning, that is
Interesting.
the time for doing at least some kind of data analytics. Most of them would probably start with benchmarking. How am I doing compared to my peers? It's a fairly simple analytics for companies like Dun& Bradstreet, because the startup knows everything about themselves, but we know a lot about companies similar to them. We know a lot about their competition.
Interesting.
So that could be one starting point. They could also ask for advice from an analytics company about where are they on the continuum of maturity. Sometimes companies think I'm using very advanced analytics, but they may not actually be doing so. So working with a third party to get grounded, to get real, and then make the decision of where I want to go will probably be the right
No, I
approach.
think that's you made a great point, and this is like from my personal consulting experience. Most of the businesses I talk to, they they what to them what cutting edge is and what really cutting edge is. There's a huge gap, and the bigger you are, and some of it is justified, like as you were pointing out that the huge infrastructure that or legacy that you have to maintain and sort of the cultural DNA that you are sort of bound with. But you're absolutely right that having sort of an outside perspective to keep a check on whether you're doing the current, I think that's very very crucial. And thank you for touching that point. It's very relevant. So I think we are almost on the tail end of this session. So let's talk about. I want to briefly touch about the leadership aspect of from your side. So if suppose uh, for the data driven leaders, right? So if anyone who's aspiring to be a CEO or who's sort of thinking about becoming a CEO, what are some of the like top three qualities that you think that they should start nurturing that will help them through this journey, be becoming sort of more data driven and hence sort of suiting to the CEO role? What are some of the two or three things that you think aspiring leaders should practice on?
Sure. So, uh, you know, this is an evolving field. The knowledge in this area is growing very, very rapidly. So, the first thing you will have to recognize is you are not going to know it all. And the folks who are coming out of grad schools and doing all the research, doing all the hands-on work, they actually know more than you. So my strategy really is to hire the smartest people I can and then stay out of their way. I think the role I play these days more is more a business focused role, helping these, young, genius, really smart scientists to come up with solutions that the business will actually utilize. And in most cases, that's the training my team members need, how to adapt their skills so it suits the business.
Interesting. I think very well said. I totally agree with you that delegation is one of the core essential fact when the industry is rapidly growing. And I remember talking to one of the infrastructure company, and the leader was saying, "Hey, my models are the best." And then sort of suddenly I opened a Google in front of them and saying, "Hey, let's see." And then I realized, oh, and then he said, "Yeah, I should have researched more or whatever." So that's very well said that you'll be needing smart people to do that. And thank you so much for sharing that. Now, as I think as a parting thought, there's one of the philosophical point that we hear a lot about. Now, the more you right now, many businesses are treating analytics as their core differentiator, right? So these capabilities define um, your differentiation. Now, analytics is primarily based on science, and many times businesses differentiators are the art of how they do things, right? So the more analytical driven you become, and sort of more you kill art and sort of appreciate science. Like what is your take on this this philosophical theory of how businesses can keep both and still sort of stay afloat.
Yeah, I actually don't think you move away from art, you know. I'm actually quoting my data science leader. She always says that in order to be a good data scientist, you need to be three things. You need to be a good analyst, you need to be a good data ninja, and the third thing is you need to be an artist. So it is really a combination of art and science.
Interesting, interesting. So with that, thank you so much, Nipa. I think it has been fabulous to learn about your journey. It has been really awesome to see how DNB do its stuff. And thank you so much for being very candid and sharing a bunch of interesting sort of areas. And love to have you on board sometime later to discuss your journey and take a deeper dive. And thank you so much for sharing your time with our community.
Thank you, Vishal. I feel very lucky to be able to lead analytics in a data and analytics company like Dun&Bradstreet. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to your audience.
Thank you so much.
I thought I was sick of home, but actually I was homesick. Never really knew that I would have to grow up so quick. I'm so uncomfortable, don't know anybody here. Just a couple dudes that I met once, that's it. And I go into the booth feeling nervous. Got butterflies in my stomach like I'm so worthless. Is the mic on? I don't know how to work this. Inside I'm breaking down, I hope I'm not up on a